a single fruit. It's incredible how something as simple as a fruit can hold so much weight in someone's heart, bringing with it waves of nostalgia that we didn't even know we could feel. To me, it was just a fruit, but to someone dear to me, it was so much more. Good evening, everyone. My name is Elquza, and today I'm going to share a story. A story that does not belong to me, but has undoubtedly built parts of my character. It has shaped my identity, and well, that's something I'll hold on to forever. Identity has always been complicated for me, bound by one central thread: my culture. I was taught to hold on to it fiercely and to celebrate it proudly, yet truly connecting to it wasn't always easy. I grew up in a Middle Eastern family, surrounded by traditions and customs. I always knew who I was. But knowing and feeling are two different things. I'm Palestinian. I've always known that. But how could I say I was Palestinian when I had never even stepped foot in Palestine? When my Arabic came out broken and hesitant? When my homeland was reduced to stories and memories rather than a place I could touch? I craved something tangible, a deeper connection, and that connection came to life through my grandfather's stories. My Cedo stories were more than just words. They were history, carried in the voice of a man who had lost everything except his pride. And at the heart of his first story was his mulberry tree. Some of my fondest memories were always with my Cedo. He'd always tell me, "You are my first granddaughter. I've loved you the longest, and I love you most." Even when we lived hours apart, every visit to see him felt special. He had a ranch, a market, a life he had built from nothing, and I loved being a part of it. I loved feeding the animals, helping him with his work, waking up to his warm voice telling me sabah al-khair, or good morning, every morning at the crack of dawn before he'd leave to work. My favorite memories, though, were the car rides. My Cedo would drive to a town about 30 minutes away from his home called Ramona to pick up goats for his ranch, and he'd let me and my cousins come along. We'd play games in the back seat, giggling and laughing until we arrived, and once we got there, he'd stop at the same spot every time, under a tree with dark berries that looked like blackberries, but were something else: mulberries. Without a word, he'd reach up, open the sunroof, and gather a handful of those berries for us. We'd pop them into our mouths, and it was the sweetest thing I had ever tasted. He turned to me and said, "This dana is tut," the Arabic word for mulberries. He didn't need to say anything more. I could see it in his eyes that this moment brought back memories. He turned to me again and smiled and said, "I used to eat these with my friends back in Palestine. We'd sit under a tree just like this one, and I'd lay a blanket underneath to catch the berries as it fell." And then his smile faded. I saw a rare sadness in my Cedo's eyes. The happiest person I knew suddenly looked distant. I understood why, though. He missed home. My Cedo was born in Bethlehem, Palestine in 1956, but the land he called home had been taken long before his birth. His parents were from Suba, a small village near Jerusalem, but in 1948, everything changed. The Nakba, or catastrophe in Arabic, uprooted their lives just as it did for hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. Families were violently torn from their homes to make way for the creation of a new state. Just a few towns away from my great-grandparents' village in Jerusalem, a massacre took place in a village called Deir Yassin. People were tied to trees and burned alive, Others were lined up and shot. My great-grandparents didn't need to be told twice what could happen to them, but a soldier came to their door to tell them anyway. He gave them a choice that was really no choice at all. Leave, he said, or what happened to Der Yassin will happen to you. So they left. They left behind the walls they had built with their own hands, the trees they had planted, believing, hoping that it would be temporary. But they never went back. 8 years later, my Cito was born into exile as the 5th of 10 children, but he never had the luxuries I did. When I was young and played soccer, my dad bought me a brand new pink soccer ball. But my Cito, he and his friends played with dirty socks rolled into a ball. When he was just 12 years old, he got his first job at a chicken factory, bringing home 1 chicken a week to feed all 12 members of his family. His father, or my great-grandfather, was once a respected mayor in his town, but now worked as a security guard at an orphanage. And when food was scarce, he would tell his children, "Watching you eat makes me full." That line has survived generations too. My Cito still says it to me today. When the borders briefly opened 1 year, my great-grandmother made the village back to her village, Suba. She took my Cito with her. She walked to the trees she had planted long ago and reached for the fruit when a man came out of her house and asked her, "What are you doing on my property?" "Your property?" she asked. "This is my house. I planted these trees with my own hands." But the man didn't care. The house no longer belonged to her. The land she called home was no longer hers to return to. Imagine that. The place where you laughed, loved, planted roots, literally and figuratively, now someone else's. She left again, but that wasn't the end. My Cito was just 11 years old when soldiers came again. Borders closed, people were displaced once more. The Nakba happened all over again. But this time, my great-grandmother said no. She refused to leave. My Cito's entire family stayed in their one-room house. One room. A living room by day, a kitchen at dinner, a bedroom at night. They stayed in that room with no electricity, no food, and no certainty about what tomorrow would bring. I used to think that identity was simple. It was about where you were born, what language you spoke, or the customs you practiced. My Cito taught me that identity is so much more than that. Identity is resilience. It is carrying the weight of those who came before you. It is the bridge between past and present, the story of survival passed down through generations. He lost his home. His family lost everything they had. But they never lost their pride in who they were or where they came from. And I feel that too. I feel it when I look at a map of Palestine and know that I can't visit my family's village. I feel it when I stumble over my Arabic, embarrassed that I'm not fluent in the language that holds my history. And I feel it when I read the headlines today and see history repeating itself again. And I felt it most when I stood in Jordan last summer, just footsteps away from Palestine. I saw the border. I saw the soldiers standing there with their guns raised, guarding a land that was once so free. I was so close, but I could not cross. It's a longing for a place I've never touched, a home I've never stood in, but one that lives within me all the same. It's in the sweetness of the mulberries, in the scent of olive oil. It's in the language we struggle to keep alive, and the stories that shape our history. Our mulberry tree was more than just a tree. It's a symbol of memories. Its fruit was a reminder of simpler times my Cito could no longer touch. But it was also a reminder that even when the world takes everything from you, something beautiful can still grow. I speak of my Sido's pain, of the displacement, of the struggles that shaped his past, but this isn't just history. This is our cruel reality. Even now, as I stand here, it's still happening, and every day it grows worse. Palestinians are being murdered, tortured, imprisoned, and torn from their homes while the world watches in silence. And sometimes I think, what if the world could feel this pain? What if they could feel even a fraction of what I feel, what my Sido felt, what millions of Palestinians continue to feel? Maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to break the silence. Maybe then, something would finally change. Palestine is disappearing before our eyes, but our traditions, our stories, our history will not. I want to give these stories a physical connection, but I can't. Just as my Sido and his family were blocked by a border, I am too, generations later. And yet every time we try to speak about Palestine, we're silenced. They twist our words, make our pain political. But the truth is that this isn't just politics. This isn't politics at all. This is personal. This is about my grandfather, about my family, about the generations of Palestinians who have lost everything and still cannot go back home. To anyone who has ever felt disconnected from their culture, to any child of immigrants who are struggling with their identity, know this: your roots matter. You don't have to be fluent in your ancestors' language or walk the streets of your homeland to live it. It's in the way you celebrate your traditions, in the foods you eat, in the values you uphold. Your culture is not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to adjust. It's something to embrace, live, and speak. Because our families held on to it for us. Now it's our turn to make sure it lives on. I may never be able to return home, but home will always be within me. And as long as I remember where I came from, I will never be lost. Resilience, pride, home. These are my inheritance. They are what I've learned from my grandfather's life, and they are what guide me as I write my own story. And like the mulberries that stained my hands as a child, his legacy colors every part of who I am. And just as that tree continues to bear fruit, I will continue to grow, rooted in the strength of those who came before me. Thank you.